or welcome to the library. I am the recorder, and today we are going to be taking a look at a part of ancient Annals history. A series of tales, each focused on either an event or a person's actions in the aftermath thereof. The Annals Tragedies are what they are known as, and each is a story from which the Annals are taught fundamental lessons as to their very nature and the implications and dangers that come with the power they naturally wield as elder children of the Nine Wings, the creator of all. As is no doubt known to my regular visitors and my perceptive patrons. But for new guests to the library, allow me to explain this will only be a brief look into these tales and some of the history around them. Expanded looks into any or all of them is more than likely in the future, and if you'd like to see a particular subject sooner rather than later, do not hesitate to make your opinion known. Each tragedy is known by its own title, an introduction to the lesson to be taught. Names such as the Tragedy of Innocence, the Tragedy of Ignorance, the Tragedy of Hubris, and the Tragedy of Avarice, along with perhaps an unknown number of other such tales. The Annals are a proud people, and in fact that any of these tales are known outside their own people is an irritant to some of them. These four tales, or tragedies more accurately, give us insight into how the early Annals were as a people, and highlights just how far they fell, as shown in our recent look at the beginning years of the Age of Valor. They also show us, despite appearances to the contrary, the Annals' great power, their grace, has intricacies and pitfalls to go along with the virtually unlimited potential application it grants the Annals. Furthermore, it shows that regardless of what many would have thought the common folk to believe in the realms, the Annals are capable of whatever they wish. But there are limits, even for them. For today's entry, we will look at two of the four known tragedies, those of ignorance and hubris. Beginning with the tragedy of ignorance, we find this tale is said to have taken place in the time before time, that nebulous period in the earliest days of Jam'mar. It is said that the Annals in question had been contacted regarding a strange item that had fallen from the sky onto Jam'mar. A massive meteor of a strange material. In the days following its impact, the land around had begun to shift and die, and the animals grew sick or twisted. And thusly notified, one of the Annals' number was dispatched to learn about this new thing and to mend the damage to the still fresh world. After arriving and spending a few days examining the fallen rock, the crater it had made, and the surrounding lands and area, the Annals was at a loss, as there was no magic at work here, no grace or draconic shaping to be seen or felt. Yet the land was dying, and he could not find the reason or method. For days more he searched and looked for any clue, even breaking the meteor open to see if perhaps some artifacts lay within, only to find it made of a mix of dirt and strange ores, no doubt collected in the infinite dark places between the planets that this thing had traveled. It was not until the first feather fell from his wing, after he stood following a session focusing on the meteor, that he became aware of something new to him. He felt unwell, as if his body was tired in a way he had never known. And in that frightening moment of realization, he knew whatever this was, it could harm even an Analar, and had to be stopped immediately. In the next few moments, he acted to preserve Jam'mar and accomplish his task. He called on his grace to gather whatever was causing this, every scrap of it, and bring it and focus it in on himself. Furthermore, he used his grace to augment and ward his armor to hold and contain this vile poison that was killing without leaving a mark. In the next few moments, the Analar's body and armor absorbed every bit of energy that was causing the damage to both him and the land and the animals around, as well as all the small fragments of the matter that was mixed into the meteor and impact site that was releasing this energy. All of this into his armor and body, and soon after, his physical form, still held fast by his armor, faded away, either melted by the energies or burned away by the same, combined with the pressure of everything that was being stuffed into the Analar and his armor, contained by the indomitable force of will, powering and guiding the grace and in augmenting the armor. The Analar's spirit and soul was able to fuse with the armor to maintain the seal of its destructive and unknown power, so that he could learn its nature. The force at play here, in short, was radiation, unstable elements and their deadly emissions. As the tragedy of ignorance would learn as he mended that very ignorance that had put him in this eternal position over the coming decades and centuries of study. He found that there were any number of better ways to have handled that situation. And he has since developed and taught numerous protocols, wards, spells, and other methods for use in dealing with radiation and its effects. He still stands as the foremost expert on matters radiological among the Analar, as well as those students that have earned the rare privilege of being taught by him in the dark recesses of Tranus, where it is said he is to this very day. He is forever bound to his armor, as to let the will containing the compacted and near chain-reacting radioactive material slip for even a moment, could see the instantaneous detonation of hundreds of pounds of purified radioactive material, as his grace took only what was radioactive and all of that energy and compressed it to within his armor. While it does not even constitute subconscious effort to maintain it as long as he inhabits the armor, the efforts to do so from outside its wards are more more than even the tragedy himself could affect. His is the lesson of why just gracing the problem away is not at all wise, and, in fact, will bring ruin on those who do not learn to use their grace in a way that conforms to reality, as opposed to merely forcing reality to be what they wish. How one must truly understand reality to truly safeguard and guide it. He is the tragedy of ignorance, in spite of the best of intention, and his is but one of the tragedies of the Analar. The second and final tragedy we will look at in this entry is the tragedy of hubris. In this tale, we follow an Analar on his duties in the library of a very powerful master. How, with each task or endeavor that was met with his eager enthusiasm, saw our subject grow in wisdom, power, and ability. From his first missions of retrieving minor items of interest for his master, to eventually crafting demi-planes to serve as a tool to further his service in his master's name, our subject became mighty and privy to many secrets and truths, which were not meant even for one as loyal and gifted as he. His master, at no point, worried about his loyal and most competent of aides. For while he was aware that our subject knew things dangerous for even an Analar to know, he was also assured that our subject would never turn against the will of the Nine Wings. However, in the face of our subject's growth and hunger for ever more knowledge, power, and ability, the master saw fit to draw a line for our subject, and in so doing, most likely ensured what was to follow. The line was simple, a single tome. Of all the thousands and likely millions that were kept within his hall, was never to be perused, read, or studied by his aide. Never was he to open its covers, and if found outside its proper place, was to be brought directly to the librarian. A simple rule, and arguably a fair price for near unfettered access to the rest of his master's collection of lore, knowledge, and power. The rule was not arbitrary, nor capricious or cruel, and it was very well grounded in logic, as the master explained to his aide while laying out this new condition to his service. This book was not like any other, and no matter how he might feel on the matter, our subject would never be prepared or protected should he choose to violate this singular stricture. If he abides by this rule, he would never know everything, but his service to the Nine Wings would never be in doubt to any at any time. Should he choose not to, however, that act of betrayal would shadow him forevermore, and it would poison everything he touched with mistrust and apprehension. It is unknown, and really not spoken to, how long these warnings held our subject in check. But eventually, he sought out, found, and opened the tome, perused its pages, and became the Tragedy of Hubris. For his master was none other than Master Gryphon, elder god of time and history, keeper and master of the library. Of course, it was in this library that our subject toiled and studied all his many years of loyal service. And in its inner sanctum, where the tomes of every life and paths of their fate are kept, is where he found his own tome. The moment he opened the book, he became aware of the spider webs of lies and misdirection that his life would now have to take, as he was now forever bound to the life as seen in the tome, with its crisscrossing of time and history in eternal service and seeking of justice for a crime he now knew he could not stop. Furthermore, he could not ever share even a word of his knowledge, or risk causing complications even greater than what he might try to prevent or change. Despite all the temporal exclusion fields and other masterful measures he had taken, nothing had stopped the effect of either the tome itself or what came next. He was immediately expelled from Master Gryphon's service and his library, to be set adrift and pulled along the strings of fate his hubris had now forged for him from solid star metal, to be forever untrusted, and yet undeterred in his continued service to the Nine Wings and the realms he created. It is said he was present in the home city during the 36 seconds, and found redemption and return to his true form and power afterwards, and further said that he still uses the tools crafted in those ancient days to further this mission of service to the realms. His is the tale of hubris, in the might of grace and in the reach of Analar power and ingenuity. How there are some lines that even they cannot cross without consequence. A lesson that has only seen its wisdom again and again reaffirmed, even if it was ignored at the time, whether by the 36 seconds he bore witness to, or by the dark reign of Vanson brought on by his people's disregarding of him and the lesson he represented. A reign, it is said, that his webs of service has had him endure and live through multiple times, all as a further example and reason as to the price of not heeding the lesson of the tragedy of hubris. In these two tales, we see how the Analar had their own growing pains and hard lessons in their early years, and how, even as both these individuals are still extant in today's current day affairs, and indeed have been seen and mentioned in these entries in the past, these lessons continue to resound or have an active, if subtle, hand in the affairs of things, even today. it is not without merit to say that without the tragedies, or more importantly, the lines and limitations their lines make clear, it is fully conceivable that the NLR would have been far more destructive of a force on the realms, without the clear cost and consequence for the misuse of their power. What would discourage them if they were bored or ambitious otherwise? These are the reasons the subjects of the tragedies are referred to as such. It is a unique honorific that accords them a place for their foundational teaching of the world in which the NLR operate as a whole. A living lesson that should never be disputed nor countered, and thus always there to be learned from. And this is where we will bring things to a close for this entry on the NLR Tragedies of Ignorance and Hubris. My perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and of course, my new guests. I hope you've enjoyed this look at these ancient yet currently relevant tales, and will join me again in future in our further explorations of both the NLR and their tragedies, as well as the greater realms of Jam'mar that they are a part of. Until you next make your way to the library for another entry, I, as always, have been the recorder, and by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.